arms today, and you'll notice I'm limping, and I don't even have a good story. I used to have my own Harley, and I did drop it a couple of times, but it didn't make me limp. Now I'm just old and I'm limping, so. But I am going to say it's probably an old Harley injury. Do we have any visitors or visiting Rotarians? Yes.
I'm delighted to have my guest, good friend, Tim McLaughlin. He's a partner at Co-Founders Capital.
Give Ruggles wanting to join the club, and we're trying to get the paperwork filled out every second week in a row. So.
Nice, welcome. Nice. Anyone else?
We have a couple visitors from, we have like the governor of that.
Are you going to introduce them?
Yeah, there he is, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My name is Jeff Blass. I'm the governor nominee, so I'll be governor in a couple of years. So I just thought I'd stop and visit you guys and say hello.
Thank you. I also have a guest, my husband, Wayne Herndon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Veronica Ben. I'm the district governor-elect. So I'll be serving after Nathan. So happy to visit you guys in the future.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to start the fine basket. Okay. Come up with your own reason to dig deep. Yes. Don't take my reason. All right, what a patriotic week we have had. All right. We have all exercised our right to vote as citizens of the United States. I hope you enjoyed that privilege and that right. Today is Veterans Day. This is a day for Americans to respect and thank our veterans. Who knows what Veterans Day was originally called? Armistice Day. And what did that commemorate? End of World War I. Yes. Britain, Canada, Australia, and France are celebrating Veterans Day today, just as we do. The tomb of the unknown soldier was memorialized on Veterans Day in 1921. And Veterans Day does not have an apostrophe. It is VETERANS Day. People think it usually has an apostrophe, but it doesn't. And Veterans Day is not the same as Memorial Day. Memorial Day is to remember those who gave their lives for our country, particularly in battle or from wounds they suffered in battle. And Memorial Day is thanking veterans for their sacrifice. Veterans Day is also to thank you. So, if you serve in the United States military, any branch, please stand. Remain standing. If you are the spouse, or the parent, or the sibling, or the child of anyone who served in the military, please stand. Because you sacrificed as well. While we're standing, and the rest of you, if you would, could we please pledge allegiance to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for many, many sacrifices. I would like to talk about my favorite veteran. And he doesn't know this. This is my favorite veteran. This is Sergeant Wayne Herndon of the U.S. Air Force. He hadn't changed a bit, has he? I was such a bad military wife back. That's why he only stayed in 4 years and then left to go and work as a civilian for the Marine Corps at Cherry Point. We were stationed in Nellis Air Force Base, Las Vegas, Nevada, really hard duty. And he was a jet engine mechanic. So I got him in trouble all the time. You know, there's special parking places at the commissary for the base commander. Well, I had a baby. And back then, you could leave your baby sitting in the car, in a car seat, and run into the store and get what you needed. And you never worried about the baby. You kept the air conditioner running. Everything was fine. The only thing, he would get called up to the base commander's office because I had parked in the parking space, and the base commander's wife would want the space. But, you know, me, little Miss Sergeant's wife, was parked there. So he got in trouble for that a lot. He said, Pam, stop parking in the base commander's parking space. Okay, I can handle that. We had a 3-pound Yorkie, 3 pounds. Living in Las Vegas, there's no trees. There was a leash law. How do you put a leash on a 3-pound Yorkie? So she would lay out in the front yard in the shade of the mailbox. Well, the SPs would ride around, they would write us up for this dog not being on a leash. And again, Wayne would get called into the base commander's office, and we were told if I didn't straighten up, we might have to move off base. Wow. The other thing that was my pet peeve when I was a military wife, anytime I went on base to shop, they wanted his social security number. And I didn't know his social security number. I'd say, I'll give you mine. And I'll never forget this lady looking at me and saying, honey, if the United States Air Force wanted him to have a wife, they'd issue him one. So he got out in good time before he actually had to serve time in the brig, probably because of his wife. And again, served as a civilian for 17 more years with the United States Marine Corps. And I'm very proud of the service, so thank you, Wayne. And all of you. All right, at this time, I'd like to say a prayer. Please bow your head. Heavenly Father, you tell us to give you thanks in all things, because this is your will for those in Christ Jesus. We enter your presence with a heart of thanksgiving for the veterans who have served while separated from their families. Thank you for their return home from faraway duties. We are grateful for their protection and the protection of their families. Lord, our hearts are grateful for your goodness and steadfast love you have for each veteran. We continually remember them in our prayers. Bless this meal that we are receiving and the hands that have prepared it. Amen. Amen. President Mike. President-elect Mike. Sorry.
Push the button.
Thank you, Tom. Good job. Yes, this is the future right here. Yep, take a good look. Yep. Mm-hmm. Welcome, everybody. I've got a nice crowd here today. We got a great speaker. We've got a lot on tap today, so I'll get right moving along with it. First, I want to talk about the State Employees Credit Union Family House Dinner is next Thursday night. Joe has got a sign-up sheet going around. I'm sure he'd appreciate anybody's help. If you want to get out and do something really good, go help feed at the family house. You'll leave there thinking you're a whole lot better off than when you got there. Let's see. Somebody else got a quick announcement? Sure. Tom Shea.
Real quick, next Saturday is a Georgia Tech game, but it's also an opportunity to plant trees at the library. So just in case you're looking to do both things. 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, Saturday morning, the 19th. We don't need a lot of heavy lifting. There may be some, but I think it's mostly going to be mulching and putting up fences around the trees. And there's plenty of spots available for folks. I'll send out another decaf announcement, but thank you all for putting it on your calendar. And the game's not till 5:30, so it shouldn't interfere.
You go and plant some trees, work up a good appetite, come to our tailgate. I understand that Mike Clayton is going to be cooking barbecue, whoever that guy is. But anyway, I'm going to get Freddie to come up here now and introduce our speaker. He's got a time schedule, so today we're going to get him going and get him on back to basketball.
Thank you, President Mike. Our speaker today, hope everybody is well, is the author of this book that has just been out, entitled Together, Our speaker teamed with Adam Lucas and with Matt Bowers to make this fantastic book about the season last, which was a remarkable season. And to introduce this person whose labor and fruit of that labor, James Michener a few years ago wrote, "Masters in the art of living make little distinction between their work and their play, their labor and their leisure. They hardly know which is which. They simply pursue their vision of excellence at whatever they do, leaving others to decide whether they are working or playing. To them, they are always doing both." Our guest is a perfect example, who does what he loves and is very good at it. Please welcome Steve Kirshner.
I asked to please be short. Not because I'm a time crunch, I just y'all didn't hear about my background. You want to hear about Carolina athletics, football, basketball, whatever you want to talk about. I do have a couple of, I don't know, prizes or gifts or something along that. We did just publish a book on last season. Adam Lucas, Matt Bowers, who works with me in the communications office, and myself, Maggie Hobson, was the phenomenal photographer. It's our fourth collaboration together. We did the 05, 09, 17 championship books as well. And we decided, I can't remember if I told the story in April when you were nice enough to have me, but we decided before the outcome of the Kansas game we were going to do a book. Part of that was we had to, for promotional purposes, we had to make that call going into the game. But we also decided that the season was compelling enough, regardless of the outcome of that one game, the last game. There were enough compelling stories that our fan base would want to hear about that. So we decided to do the book. Regardless of what happened, we're glad we did. Disappointed with the outcome of that game against Kansas, but glad to do the book anyway. And then the other book that I have with me, I don't knock over the lectern, is it's about a 508-page tome. I call it Carolina Basketball Record Book. It's an almanac, basically a sort of encyclopedia of Carolina basketball. So I thought, real quick, very informally, I'm going to throw out 2 trivia questions, and the first person to holler out the name, I'll give you get your first choice. If you've already bought together, you can take the record book or vice versa. So the first question I have is, last year in the NCAA tournament, you may know that Armando Bacot set the school record for most rebounds in the tournament. He had 99 rebounds in the 6 games, which by far blew away the UNC record, Kennedy Meeks, and was also the most by any player, by any school in the NCAA tournament since Tom Gola from LaSalle in the 1950s. So Bacot has the record for most rebounds in one tournament. Who has the most points by one Tar Heel in one NCAA tournament season?
No.
William.
No. No. Come on, folks.
Lenny Rosenbluth. Who said that?
I did.
There you go.
Lenny Rosenbluth scored 142 points in only 5 games. Right now, to get to the championship game, you play 6, and Lenny scored 142, which is, I think, just over 28 points in 1957. And I use that as a question tonight at the College of Charleston game at halftime. Lenny and Lenny's family and friends, some of the players from the 57 team are going to be on hand to honor Lenny, who passed away this summer. So the second question, also Armando Bacot is in there, keeping it timely. Last year, Armando, as you may know, was the only North Carolina player ever to have 20 or more rebounds in 2 NCAA tournament games. He had 22 against St. Peter's in the regional final. He had 21 against Duke in the national semifinal. Who's the only other Carolina basketball player ever to have 20 more rebounds in an NCAA tournament game?
No.
Rosenbluth.
No.
James. Pete Brennan.
No. All right, now I gotta go to him. No. Close to Hansbrough, but not quite.
Marcus Beaver.
Wow, this guy's going to be very disappointed that y'all didn't get this. I'm going to keep the record book. Sorry. Now.
Great shot.
We'll figure out a way to give it to me. Tyler Zeller had 22 against Ohio in 2012 Sweet 16 in St. Louis. So figure out some way here. So thank you for having me back. For those of you who don't know what I do, Mr. Badura a long time ago gave me the ridiculously long title of Senior Associate Director of Athletics for Communications, Strategic Communications, Media Relations, Sports Information, whatever you want to call it. Basically, I'm one of the people responsible for telling the story of Carolina athletics, whether it's our teams, coaches, players, the university, whatever you have. Coach Smith always talked about the front porch of the university being athletics, and that's kind of what I do, is I kind of welcome people to that front porch and introduce them to players and coaches and teams that we think bring great light to the university, and I'm spoiled as all get out. I've been here 34 years now. I appreciate Mr. Hebner still using that photo of me from 2006, whatever it is. I had hair at one point, but I appreciate that photo. Pulling that one off the internet or something. But I've been here 34 years now. I came here as an intern Mac's first year. When Mac was hired the first time in 1988, we endured that 1-10 season together, and I escaped for the second 1-10 season in '89 and came back in 1990 after a year in Florida. I leave in less than a year, and I've been at UNC ever since 1990. And work primarily right now with the men's basketball team and the 2 golf teams as their primary communicator. I also run the press box at football. I was the football SID Max, I guess 8 or 9 of his first 10 years here. I worked directly with football, and now I oversee the press box on game day, and I don't handle the communications directly for football, but it's so fun to have a great football team and to have a nationally relevant football team. And we're so spoiled in our department and as fans of Carolina athletics with all the success our teams have, whether it's field hockey. They're ahead 5-1 right now in the first round of the NCAA tournament. They gave up a goal 20 seconds into the game today as the top seed overall, which puts a little pressure on you. But they got about 5 in the first half. Our soccer teams, of course, but our golf teams, we have a guy that's going to win the Golfer of the Month nationally this afternoon that I'll be putting that story out when I go back to my office. But we're very spoiled, but it's great to have a football team that is in the national conversation, particularly in November. And you know, being 8-1 and being ranked and playing a game on national television tomorrow and having a legitimate Heisman Trophy candidate is really remarkable. The other day at the UNCW basketball game on Friday night, Luke May, some of you may remember him, Luke May was sitting next to me at the scores table, and they introduced Luke and Joel Berry up on the video board, and everybody gave him a big hand, and I said, you know how you would have got a bigger hand? And he goes, no. I said, if it put a graphic up there that said Drake's brother. He said, no kidding. I agree. How about that family? I got here right after Mark played quarterback, and all I heard from people who preceded me here was Mark May could really deal, and had he not blown his shoulder out, he would have been in the NFL. He was one of our great quarterbacks. And if you knew him, Mr. Adora, please nod approvingly, if you knew Mark May, he is 10 times as nice a person as he was a great quarterback. And that family is remarkable. I mean, you have 2 national championship sons, Luke, Carolina basketball, Cole, who pitched at Florida when they won the championship College World Series in 17. Bo is a walk-on the basketball team this year, who has endured 9 knee surgeries in the last 4 years. 9. He blew his knee out his junior year and basically ended his junior year after about 3 games. And since then has had 9 knee surgeries. And he would be playing D1 basketball, maybe not ACC level, but he would be playing if he had not been hurt. But it was so cool to see him hit a couple of shots at live action a few weeks ago, and the kids love him, and he's doesn't have, just the 9 knee surgeries have taken so much out of him, but that family is remarkable. So to be able to to have a football, when you're talking about a legitimate Heisman candidate, a lot of schools, that's what we do. Part of our jobs is to promote players for national awards, regardless of the sport. Like I said, I've got a golfer that's going to be the Ben Hogan Award October Golfer of the Month. And part of my job was after the end of October, I had to submit to this national award. What did he do and why should he be considered? So, that's what we do on a daily basis to promote our student athletes. But to have in November a redshirt freshman who took 10 snaps last year at quarterback to be not just in the conversation, but if you listen to the pundits, if he were at a school like Alabama or Clemson or Texas or something like that, he'd probably be the favorite. If you just put him in sort of a blind test and said, here's what player A, B, C, and D have done, and their team's 8-1 ranked, who would be the favorite? Drake right now might be the favorite, but he's just had to play a little bit of catch up, and that's one of the things about what we do in college athletics, whether it's polls that come out too early or people predicting certain awards too early. You got to play a lot of catch up. If you're not in that first poll, if you're 22nd, you're trying to work your way up to being one of the top 4. It's hard. You just got to vault over so many people. And the same thing goes for individual awards. If you're behind, if you're not one of the ones that are mentioned in the Street and Smiths and Lindy's and Athlon magazines in the summer that are on the top of people's minds, you've got to play catch up. Well, the best way to play catch up is to do what he's doing, and that's beat people and don't throw interceptions and pull off fourth quarter game-winning drives and touchdown passes at the end of the Duke game and things like that. So he does have a chance. He really can't have an off day. He's just got to keep going and going. There was a great article on ESPN.com that posted yesterday, if you didn't get a chance to read it. David Hale, who's out of Charlotte, who covers the ACC, and really does a good job with that. He wrote a long feature on Drake and his family, and he talked to Luke over in Spain, and it's a really good piece, and it's one of those, that's the kind of national type pieces of publicity that you need to be able to get yourself into the conversation for an award like that. So hopefully that will be something. If you also, there's a really good piece on GoHeels.com right now. Luke May did an interview with, how many know Dragan Mihalovich? Okay. Dragan, Carolina guy, WCHL alum, 60 Minutes star producer. His son Ben is a freshman. And I didn't know freshmen could do that. He spent his first semester of his freshman year over in Spain. I thought you had to wait till like your junior year, but Ben's doing that right now. And while over there, he interviewed Marcus Page and Luke, and he did this really good piece on Luke. So if you're interested in catching up on Luke and playing pro ball in Spain and his family background, there's a really good piece right now on Go Heels. So in addition to football going on, obviously the basketball team, the men's basketball team is ranked number 1. The women's basketball team is ranked number 12. This is the time of year where everybody in college athletics, there's 2 times of year where there's crossover. November when the fall sports and the winter sports merge, and then March when the winter and spring. I love this time of year because I love being busy. I hate summer because I'm so busy because I've got this to update, and this year this to write, and the museum to update. I broke something. And the men's golf and women's golf. I've got all this stuff in the summer. I'm busy as hell, but there are no games. And the best part of working, to me, in college athletics is 1 is working with kids and 2 is working games. That's why we do this. Most of the people who are in college athletics do it. I love game day. I mean, today, the reason I have to duck out at 1:45 is because at 2 o'clock, that's 5 hours before our tip time tonight against Charleston. Always 5 hours before tip is our shoot around, where Coach Davis and the team goes through a shoot around. And Coach Williams' shoot arounds were pretty much that. They shot. And they ran through some dummy offense, and they were about 20 minutes long, and they broke a sweat, and it wasn't that big a deal. Hubert's are a little bit more intense. Hubert gets after it. They do a, I've got to go meet the TV people. Mike Jaminski and Evan Lepler are broadcasting the game tonight, and we allow them to, they came to practice yesterday, but we allow them to come to the shoot around, and then Hubert will walk over while the team is actually shooting around on both ends of it. Does like 15 minutes. 7.5 minutes on each end of the court. Hubert will come over and he'll talk to the TV people. and they'll ask him questions about Charleston. They'll ask him questions about who's hurt, who's playing well, why are we playing well, why did we play so well on Friday, whatever. And that's his time to talk to them and give them some background. And then I sit there the whole time with them and try and give them a little bit more background because Hubert doesn't have as much time, obviously, as I do to spend with them. The game on Friday night, a lot of people have asked me about, what happened. They didn't think we were as good as everybody was expecting. And Freddie has heard me say this because we go to lunch often. Freddie's heard me say this all summer, this isn't last year. We may be good enough to be in the national championship game and win it. I shouldn't say I knew. I felt we were going to be number one because right after New Orleans, all these early, way too early polls or whatever had us as number one. Every year is different. And I don't mean that, I don't say that as, Krishner's trying to spin or give an excuse or he's already laying there. I just have been around it enough to know every season is different. And Brady Manick was a huge part of why we did what we did. And I'm not saying Pete Nance isn't Brady or isn't going to do what Brady Manick did, but he's not Brady Manick. And we also played 5 guys basically 37, 38 minutes a game last year. And Hubert said the 2 games that he thought we got tired were Virginia Tech in the ACC tournament in Brooklyn and Kansas in the national championship game in the second half. We just ran out of gas. And he wants to play more guys. So to play more guys, well, number one, Puff has to get healthy. And right now, Puff Johnson hasn't been healthy the last few weeks, so he didn't play the other night. Then we have guys like DeMarco Dunn and Dontrez Styles, 2 sophomores, who didn't play a whole lot last year, although I'm very glad Dontrez Styles played against Baylor because he had one of the biggest shots of the season. But we were able to play Duke again in the semifinals because Dontrez hit a 3 in overtime against Baylor. But guys like that, Seth Trimble, Tyler Nickel, 2 freshmen that are going to play a lot. Jalen Washington, when he gets healthy, he blew his knee out his senior year. He did not play at all last year in Gary, Indiana. He's a terrific player. He's a 6'10", 6'11" kid who can really shoot the ball. And they're being very careful with him, bringing him back slowly because they don't want to do anything that would cause that to go again. So I think we're going to be pretty good. I don't know if we really deserve the number 1 ranking in the country. I think we are a top 5 team probably. I think we will eventually. One of the beauties of being around Carolina basketball for 34 years, I can't think of too many seasons where we didn't get better. I mean, really can't. I cannot think of a year where I thought, wow, we were great in November, December, and we just fell apart the last few weeks or few months. Most of the time, partly because Coach Williams didn't really care if we lost games in November or December. I mean, he cared, but he thought we could learn a lot from certain games. And there were times that he would be so darn stubborn that, we went to Michigan one year, a couple of years ago, and the second group, it was a close game. I think we actually had the lead at halftime. Luke's senior year, we had the lead at halftime, and he put the second group in to start the second, or early in the second half, and they fell apart. They weren't boxing out, they weren't getting back on defense, they were taking bad shots, and he just stood there and said, you got yourselves in this mess, you get yourselves out. And you're going to play your way in or out of the lineup in November, December. So there were times that maybe early on we didn't look so hot, but we always got better. And he and I sometimes, I remember a couple times just joking about it in the NCAA tournament or ACC tournament in March, whatever the year, we said, God, remember back in November when everybody thought we were falling off the cliff? And here we are again, we're back in the ACC championship game, or we're in the NCAA, now we're in the regional. And Hubert's team got better last year. And I think this team, if everybody doesn't panic, if we take a hit or a couple of hits in November, December, because our schedule is very difficult in this preseason or pre-ACC, I think we're going to be pretty good. But I do think this team is going to get a lot better as the year goes on. I think you're going to see the freshmen play a big role, but off the bench. I think the 5 starters are fairly well set. And can those freshmen, Seth Trimble, if you saw him the other night, he's unusual because he's a kid who really loves to play defense. And he's really quick, but he can attack the basket. Tyler Nickel isn't afraid of anything. I hadn't heard Tyler Nickel speak too much. And then last Friday, we had our press conference before the UNCW game, and I brought Tyler Nickel and Seth Trimble, and they hadn't done any interviews yet. We usually wait on our freshmen. And Tyler Nickel is as country as you can be. He's from Harrisonburg, Virginia, and when he started talking, I just looked and I went, wow. And he's a very confident young man. He doesn't want to be known as a shooter. He takes offense when people say, oh, here's the shooter, Tyler Nickel. He said, I'm a scorer and I'm a basketball player. And they said, well, it sounds like you have a little chip on your shoulder. And he said, well, maybe I do. That's okay, though. So I think those two guys, and Jalen in particular, so I think we're going to be 10 or 11 deep, and we're going to, sometimes that's too many, and probably by the time we get to January and February, we probably won't be going 10, 11, but you know, this is the time of year where those guys play their way into the lineup. So, what can I answer for you? I've talked long enough.
How has the image and likeness issue changed recruiting, particularly with basketball?
I think recruiting in general has changed, not just because of name, image, and likeness, but the transfer portal. As much as name, image, and likeness. I think there are certain schools that are going to develop a reputation as being able to attract name, image, and likeness dollars for their players. And part of that may be the market they're in. It may be their national prestige as a top program. It may be how aggressive the collectives or people around the program are in creating that fund. But the transfer portal is, I think, just as big, because you can change your program overnight with transfers. Sometimes even if there are certain schools that have sort of invested heavily into the, recruit top freshmen and play them all, and then they just be God, they're done after 1 year and just do it again. And not everybody has been able to sort of latch on to that. But if you can, coaches see that if you get a fifth-year guy who's played 100 games, that guy's probably going to be able to impact your program immediately in the short run, more so than even a 4-star or sometimes a 5-star freshman, because they just have so much experience. I mean, Roy used to talk all the time. He'd say, "Do you want talent or experience?" He said, "Yeah, I want experienced talent." and so the coaches now know, and every coach is under a win now mentality. I mean, people weren't all thrilled with Coach Davis until the end of the year, and everybody loves him now. And I had all week people go, "What's wrong with Huber's team?" After we beat Wilmington by 13. So coaches all want to, they need to win now. So I think the name, image, and likeness, I think what's, to me, my favorite thing of name, image, and likeness, so how many of you have seen the Leaky Plumbers ad? How many people know what I'm talking about? All right, so Leaky Black has an ad with a plumbing company to stop leaks. It's hilarious. Just Google Leaky Black plumbing ad. And I think that's a great use of name, image, and likeness. That puts a little bit of money in somebody's pocket that I don't think it has affected the way most people view college athletics. It's not the amateurism game of the 60s and 70s, but was that amateurism? Who knows? So I think there's a lot to it.
You brought up an interesting point about the Heisman element. What can we do to kind of get over the hump on that? Because I think in the long run, that's gonna, just like this NIL, I mean, that's part of the attraction of playing here, right? I mean, if you're a quarterback right now and you see Drake May doing what he's doing, and you see he's not really getting the hype that he would anyplace else, it's going to make us harder to recruit that position. What can we do as fans? What can the school do to kind of get us over the hump on that?
So the question is, how can we develop, how can we help Drake May enhance his profile so that a North Carolina football player, we can recruit off the fact that, hey, you can come here and win the Heisman Trophy. I have two answers to that. Keep playing the way he's doing, and win. Because if you don't win, you're not in the conversation. So if you win and you're in the top 25, you have a better chance of, the TV games are not scheduled until 2 weeks out. So you win, and you're an attractive football program or basketball program, but in this case football, you win, then when they select the game for 2 weeks from now, or sometimes they have what's called a 6-day hold, they get to pick the game on Monday before that game, as you all were trying to figure out what time to come to the game, you know that's happened. The more you win, you go from being maybe on a regional sports network to maybe the ACC network to an ESPN2 to an ABC game. And the bigger the network, the more national the game. Now all of a sudden a voter in Idaho may see Drake May play against Wake Forest or NC State or whoever that may be. And it is because there's so many voters. I mean, there's what, 900 Heisman voters, 1,000 Heisman voters all over the country, and nobody can watch all those games. So yes, social media does drive a lot of that. A David Hill story on ESPN is a big deal.
Can we like tag stuff on?
Sure, absolutely.
Is there a concerted effort that we need to kind of help with this?
That's a question for Jeremy Sharp with football. What do you want you to do to kind of augment yeah, you take the Carolina football feeds that are going out. There's a reason why every time Fox puts out a list of the top quarterbacks in the country, or Barstool Sports puts a list of here are the 3 quarterbacks with most touchdowns responsible for. There's a reason why Carolina football account retweets it. And so yes, the fan base, the more drives that, particularly with a player like Luke, who's kind of coming from nowhere, and he went on the list. He went on the list 2 weeks ago. Drake, excuse me, first time I did that. So yes, the more, and that's the beauty of social media, is that the more that other people initiate, whether it's Fox TV or ESPN or whoever it may be, the more that your own fan base can take that and push it back out. Absolutely, yes.
Jim wants to know where Maggie
Hello, Mr. Evans.
was. And I want you to talk about Larry Miller after 60 years finally getting into the National Hall of Fame.
What was the first part? I cut you off.
Jim wants to know where Maggie Hobson grew up.
I don't know. Good question. Good.
Oh.
Shameless.
Larry Miller. So when I came to North Carolina, it was 20 years after Larry played, and I did not know much about Larry Miller. And I remember, can't remember if it was Chansky or Freddie or Jim or somebody started telling me about how good Larry Miller was, and that didn't think that Larry got his due as a great player. Some of that was because Larry was real quiet, kept to himself. When he finished his career, he was up in Pennsylvania and didn't come back a lot, didn't come back to reunions, didn't come back to some of the big things, the ceremonies that we did. A couple of years ago, Jim Delaney, former commissioner of the Big Ten, played here in the late 60s. Mr. Delaney sort of created a push to get Larry into the College Basketball Hall of Fame. And next week, Larry Miller will be inducted into the College Basketball Hall of Fame out in Kansas City. Lenny is another one that is long overdue. Lenny Rosenbluth is not in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. Wow. And that's Larry and Lenny are two. We've been very blessed by the College Basketball Hall of Fame. We have a bunch of guys that they've put in the last 10, 12 years. But Larry and Lenny were 1A and 1B that we were talking about pushing. We wrote the committee. We said, look, we have a lot of, you've been very good to us. You've inducted a bunch of players, but there's a couple here that, I get it that other schools they want their guys in too, but you truly can't tell the history of college basketball if Larry Miller and Lenny Rosenbluth and eventually Tyler Hansbrough aren't in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. So hopefully Lenny will be next.
Why are most of the football games at night this year?
TV. TV. And again, partly because the night games draw better ratings for the most part. And whether we sold our soul to TV long ago, but we have to pay people like me to stay employed. It's television driven. They tell us when to play. I know many people think that we determine game times. We don't. We play when they tell us to play. I mean, we were not thrilled about playing Monday night at 9 o'clock to open the basketball season 4 days ago. But it was, and you know, we had a great crowd too. It was a fantastic crowd. You know, was it full? No, but it was a really good number and it was energetic. But we don't want to play at 9 o'clock on a Monday night. But you're the #1 team in the country, and ACC Network wants to come into the season with a splash. So they put Duke on at 7, they put us on at 9. So they had a great television doubleheader. And you know, I'm there about 2 hours after the game, so I left about 1. So I had a meeting at 8. So I like 9 o'clock games because I think they have better energy, but I don't like a 9 o'clock game on a Monday in November.
All right, so you mentioned the shoot around and how you sit. What? Stand up. Oh, stand up. I am standing up. So you mentioned the shoot around and how you talk to the announcers. So this is a two-part question. One, who are your favorite announcers to sit and talk with? The second part is who are your most disfavored announcers?
I can't say that. My favorite announcers, so the play-by-play guys usually aren't ex-basketball players. Sometimes they are. Terry Gannon played at State. He does a really good job as a play-by-play. But most of them, Freddie, would you agree, most of the talent, the play-by-play, they're professional announcers. I like sitting next to the former players because I like hearing what they have to say about our team. What do they see in our team? Or maybe what did they do at their school? I like Jay Billis. I like Mike Jaminski's doing the game tonight. I love G-Man. He's very insightful about the game. Dan Schulman, from a play-by-play standpoint, is one of my favorites. Dave O'Brien, maybe because he does the Red Sox, also is, I think, very good. But I like listening to, part of the reason that I think I've been sort of successful in doing this job is I like listening when the coaches and them talk, because I take what maybe Hubert says, or whether it was Coach Williams, or all the way going back to Coach Smith, so that I want to hear what they say to the announcers, because then when I'm talking to somebody else in a similar situation, I didn't coach at this level. I'm using what they say and their observations. So the former players are really good at it. Shane Battier, who when he did it for 1 year, I thought he was really good. He was really insightful. The guys that I think Eric Montross does a really good job. I like talking to Eric before a game. I'll go, particularly on the road when we have dinner maybe the night before or the day of the game. I like talking to Eric and say, okay, Eric, you watch the film on whoever we're playing. What do you see? What's going to be important for us tonight? Because those guys know. And yes, we're playing not the exact same system as we played when Eric played, but he sees enough and he understands the game enough. I love talking to Phil Ford. Now, Phil was on our radio network for a long time and hasn't done that in a while, but he comes to practice a lot, and I'll sit back away from the court, and you can't BS with Phil. He knows the game too well. If you try and say something that doesn't, he'll cut. This is why he's going to play, and that's why that guy's not going to play. So I think the former players who do it, Jim Nance has been fantastic, and he's got 1 more year as the play-by-play for the Final Four. He's been doing it 30+ years, and he works at it really hard. And you'll laugh when I say this now. How many people have heard Bill Walton as an announcer? How many people think he's insane? I tell you what, he probably is, but he works as hard to prepare for a broadcast as anybody I've ever worked with in 38 years of doing this. Now, what comes out on the air, I can't control, but he really works at it. He called me a couple of weeks ago. He's doing our games, or one of our games in Portland next week. And he called me like a month ago and said he wanted to talk. And I thought he meant like he wanted to talk like the week before. He was like, no, he called me. He goes, how did you even call me back? Because he started preparing like 6-7 weeks before the game. And he broke out a note about Chancellor Guskowitz that I had given to him in 2017 when he did our games in Portland Luke's junior year. He still had those notes. And he asked me something about my background. I'm like, why would you know my background from 4 years ago? So I like the guys that prepare. We do this 500-page record book, and we do 50, 60 pages of, we call them game notes every game, and I prep with the announcers. I like the guys that use the stuff we give them, because we're trying to tell a story. We're putting stuff in there that tells that story, and you can tell the guys that researched, did their work, read the stuff, talked to people, and you can tell the guys that just showed up on game day and rolled it out there.
So, in the past 5 years, there's been quite a bit of change in how coaches dress. And so I was just curious, with Carolina, it's always been Dean Smith, Roy, they've always worn coat and tie, and I respect his decision, but I'm just curious, maybe you have some insight why he decided to go the route he did rather than stay with the coat.
Remember though, Coach Williams didn't wear a tie his last year. So now we were in COVID, but I just think Hubert feels more comfortable doing it. And Coach Smith told Coach Williams when he became a head coach, you do things the way that you're going to do a lot of things that you're going to draw on from me, but you got to be the head coach, and you got to be your man, and you got to do what makes you feel comfortable. Coach Williams told Coach Davis the same thing. There are a lot of things that from 9 years being on my bench, you're going to do that we're going to keep doing it this way. And there are a lot of things, and that's been the way it's been. There are some things that Hubert has done that Coach Williams didn't do. And Coach Williams, I talked to Coach Williams about it. He goes, I think if I coached today, I'm not sure what I would do. I'm not sure, because it was more comfortable the last year, but again, it was COVID and everybody was doing it. They took a vote actually at the ACC meeting, the head coaches, it was prior to last year, I think. And it was overwhelmingly, it was like 13-2, the coaches wanted to be in more casual basketball gear. I actually, if you notice me, I started wearing a tie last year. I think it was after the Kentucky game. I said, all right, I'm trying to change something. So I went back to wearing a tie. So tonight I'll go home. And I think I'm the only person in the building now that has a tie on.
Jim?
Let's talk about football. 8-1. Who would have thought that? What's working well? What's not working well? Might have thought, where are we in the position? Not our team. Sometimes wonderful, sometimes worse. What can you tell us about you?
I'm going to tell Mac you asked me a question about the defense. I'll tell him you asked me that, Jim. You didn't hear the progression of the football program in 4 years under Mac too. Oh, I know you have. I watched the Appalachian State game too, and I mean that's one of the most frustrating. Mind-numbing. Can't figure it out. But they've played better the last couple of games, particularly in the second half. I just think the offenses are so much more ahead than the defenses in this game. I mean, Alabama and Tennessee was 52-49. And the abilities, if you have a big-time quarterback, and there are so many more big-time quarterbacks than there used to be. I think 10 years ago, there were, if you picked out the top 50 programs in the country, I'm not sure if half of them had a big-time quarterback. Now you can go to, most schools have one guy. The question is, can you keep that one guy healthy? And can you keep guys around him healthy and get good enough receivers and but the passing game in high school, the passing games are so more advanced than they were before. The quarterback elite camps that are out there, these kids are coming into school. Drake May's a redshirt freshman, he took 10 snaps. Who was the guy that you thought before Drake May? Sam Howell. Sam Howell came in, walked in here the first day as a freshman, true freshman, played right away. So I think part of it is the offenses are so more sophisticated and the quarterbacks are so much better. Receivers are so much better. I think momentum's an amazing thing, particularly in college athletics. And if you start giving up big plays, they just lead to more big plays. If you get a couple of stops, they lead to stops. And I do think there's a little bit of the momentum thing. That app game was just bizarre, right? But who would have thought that at Virginia last week, I mean, after they scored the first time they touched the ball in the second half, I thought, all right, we're just not going to be able to outscore them. We're not going to stop them. But then all of a sudden we got to stop, and they had a punt. And then they took a timeout before a punt, and then they tried a fake punt. I mean, it was just all of a sudden you get a couple of stops, and now they're on the other side of going, well, we can't stop Drake May, so how are we going to win the game? Because we can't stop Drake May. And I think, I looked on the depth chart. There are 25 guys listed on the depth chart on defense, and there are 20 that are juniors or younger. And of the 5 that are seniors, probably a couple of them are going to come back for a 5th year because of the COVID rule. So hopefully of the 25 guys that are on tomorrow's depth chart, and I'm not talking about we lost Hester, we lost Bahasic, we lost Evans. That's my concern of going down this stretch is you lost 3 of your best defensive linemen. And Bahasic was a beast inside. And the 2 kids on the end were playing well. So now all of a sudden you're going to play Wake. You're going to get State coming up. And State's got rejuvenated with his freshman quarterback. All year we talked about how good their defense was going to be. So now their quarterback play is better. And then potentially an ACC championship game with Clemson. So I worry about the depth on defense more so than the development. But yeah, Gene Chizik is a really smart football coach, and we have really good athletes on defense. And somehow, and I think Mac's been pretty open about it. We got to play better on defense. I mean, you can't give up 60 points and expect to win a game. We did, right? But you can't do that and expect to win. And going back to the earlier question about Heisman and all, you got to be in the national conversation. You can't lose games. You can't be giving up 55, 60 points and expect for the national folks to say, okay, yeah, that's a team that is a playoff caliber team and their quarterback is a fantastic player, having a great year. He should be in the Heisman candidacy. So the 2 things work together. You don't win a Heisman trophy by yourself. I mean, if you're an offensive player, it helps to have a good defense as well.
Yes, sir. Could you have an opinion? I noticed the Big 12 just signed another TV deal with ESPN, Fox. Where do you see that, everybody talks about their TV deal is not the greatest. People are realigning conferences. Where do you see Carolina in 10 years? Do you see them still in the ACC?
Well, Bubba would probably shoot me if I answered that question publicly, so I'm going to tap dance around that, and I've not had a conversation with him about it. I think this. I think there are most of the schools in the ACC are schools that could be anywhere. And I think there's a company in Bristol, Connecticut that is heavily invested in the ACC, ESPN, and ESPN needs the ACC to be a great league. We need a television partner like ESPN to do all the things that I talked about for the last 40 minutes. So I think the 2 need each other.
Yeah.
And I personally think, I don't know whether it's the ACC or somewhere else, I don't really worry about the ACC, particularly football and basketball at Carolina. Whether it's name, image, and likeness, academic compensation, the portal, how all that stuff, I don't want to say trickles down, but also bleeds into and affects the Olympic sport program, I worry about that. Because the money gap between the SEC and the Big Ten and others, it doesn't just affect football and men's basketball, women's basketball. I mean, those things are going to be covered. It's can we cover to keep a broad-based 28-sport program where we finish in the top 10 in the Directors' Cup every year, and we have women's programs and lesser profile, not lesser important, but lesser profile men's programs. Can they sustain going forward when the monetary difference is so different?
Aren't we one of the few ACC schools that field 28 teams?
Boston College, I think, is the only school. Mr. Bedore, am I correct? BC is the only one that has maybe a sport or two more than us. And Virginia, it's like BC, and then us, Virginia, and Duke are the only ones that are in the high 20s.
Right.
And that's always a consideration, but you really don't gain much by not keeping the sports. You really don't. I mean, every AD in every school in the country has done a cost analysis of cutting sports. And look at the ones that have cut. What did most of them do? They brought them back. They brought them back because of pressure. They brought them back because of financial commitments. They brought them back because the alumni said to bring them back. So I don't think that's a winning strategy. I think you've got to do other things to do that. Now, whether you tier, or I mean, there's all sorts of different ways to do it, but I don't think that's a winning strategy.
Does the Rams Club scholarship, do they have the minor sports?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we have 800 plus student athletes and 450 or so are on scholarship. Not everybody's on full ride, there's a lot of partials, but absolutely. I mean, scholarships are the absolute lifeblood of the program. Recruiting is the lifeblood of any college program, and scholarships, grant and aids are the lifeblood of your team. You can't. Now, if everybody didn't have scholarships, it's all on a level playing field, that's one thing. But if it's the Rams Club and its members and what the Rams Club has done for 75 plus years, Carolina Athletics would not be what it is if it were not for the Rams Club and its members and the people that work with the Rams Club, John Montgomery and his staff, and Moyer. I mean, Carolina Athletics is because of people like Moyer and getting out there and convincing people that an investment in a student athlete at UNC is the right way to do it. We would not be what we are if we're not for the Rams Club and its members.
Have you got time for one more?
Absolutely.
One more question.
All right. Yes, sir. All right. I want to go back to football and defense. Everybody's been poking fun at the App State game. But since App State and since Notre Dame, the average number of points they've given up is probably about 40 below that. So rather than focus on the outlier games, they're doing pretty damn good compared to what they have been doing. Of course, I grew up in Big Ten country, and watching U of M 10-7 game year after year after year, it's boring. It's fun to watch them offense. So I would say, I think Carolina's on a big high right now. And defense has actually improved a lot compared to the beginning.
And not only over the course of games, but big plays, big moments. Fourth quarter, got to get a stop, got to get an interception at Miami, got to get a stop. You know, the 3 stops in a row in Virginia when that game completely changed in the middle of third quarter. So I think again, you look at the defense. It's young. Is it where Chiswick and Mack want it to be? No, but again, I think part of that is you're playing against these quarterbacks and these sophisticated you're not going to stop everybody every time. But you've got to be able to make plays when the game is on the line. And that's what this group has done, particularly the last month of the season. So I just hope they can do it the next 4 games.
I will do that. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Which one do you want? Yours. He wants yours. He wants the good book.
I just read that, y'all. It's a great book, by the way.
really good.
Mike, grab me that.
Can't leave yet. Now we got the second most important thing. Mr. Lewis is going to talk to us about our foundation.
Oh, that's right.
Thank you. Can't leave yet.
Can't leave yet.
Just a few minutes. I had a story to tell you, but Steve, you took up my time. It's okay, bud. Your gift to the East Chapel Hill Rotary Club is a gift that keeps on giving because it goes into our endowment. And we sort out the endowment and turn off 5% on a 3-year average. We've currently got $852,000 in our foundation. And thank you. And that's going to yield $44,000 this year to the charitable and service activities of this club. I want to thank Omar for this time, and I want to thank David Kimball, because this is David Kimball's vision. Some time ago, back in 2000, I don't know if he could imagine that we would have 852,000. We're governed by a pretty strict set of bylaws and by a board of directors whose names are included in a handout that I gave to you. We are not at all involved in the governance of this club. The governance of this club is by its officers as well as its board of directors. We turn over that $44,000 to Omar and his board, and they decide how it's going to be spent. We basically operate with 2 accounts, and my purpose here today, I know we got a lot of new members, don't know much about us. I want to refresh the older folks about what we're doing, and I want you to have a sense that we care about transparency. That everything that we do, our minutes, our meetings, our financial reports are all available to you. We operate with 2 accounts. One is pretty much called a pass-through. So your donations to us, we're a 501c3. So if you want to support Bike Night, if you want to support Teacher Supply Store, pass money through us so that it goes for that purpose, that's tax deductible. We also operate with an endowment account, and I told you that that's how we determine how much money we're going to spend or pass off to the Rotary Club. Now this part gets a little bit confusing. We are not at all associated with Rotary International and its foundation. That's a completely different operation. I personally don't ever talk with them. I'm sure that the officers of our club talk with them. We operate with 3 levels of giving, but I want to stress this. We can operate at any level of giving and any timetable that you want to give. Rotary International provides a Paul Harris Fellowship. That's for a $1,000 contribution to Rotary International. And we encourage you to make that. If you would like to give us that $1,000, we'll take it. And we'll give you a Paul Harris Fellow that our club has banked at Rotary International, so you can get it both ways. The second level of giving is a $5,000 commitment. And if you achieve that, if you fulfill that pledge, then you're a Phil Rominger Fellow. Phil was our founder. And when Dave started his first campaign back in around, I guess, 2004, 2005, Phil gave the initial gift of $50,000. So that's the largest gift we've ever had, is $50,000. Think about that. We got $852,000, and it comes from people like you that are sitting in this room. By my count, we've had 3 campaigns. Then we added a 4th last year, which was the legacy concept that we've never done before. And that's pretty much thinking about estate planning and that kind of thing. And that level is $10,000, although there are many who have already met that pledge. There's 64 Rominger Fellowships associated with this club. There are 42 legacy commitments, and 9 have been fulfilled. Now, Bob Ward left, and he's our poster child for give any way you can, on any time schedule. He and Ann give $500 a year, and they're going towards the Rominger Fellow. Farming or Fellowship. Now, just a moment or two about the ask. Some might say, well, I've never been asked. Guess what? I'm asking. I'm asking right now. But it's a soft shell, folks. Soft sell. My phone number, my email account is in that handout. I'll meet with you anytime, in any place that you want to talk about it. We will develop a program that meets your needs. We want you involved. Our goal at one time in the future is to have this endowment kick off enough funds to support the charitable and service activities of this club. And the money that you contribute on an annual basis go to continue to support for this foundation. That's where we want to be in the future. I hope you believe in the East Chapel Hill Rotary Club. I hope you believe in the foundation and what we're doing. And if you do, give me a call. I'd like to have the opportunity to sell you and soft sell you. I'll tell you this, I'm going to ask you one time, and then I'm going away. I will not come back to you. I don't want you coming to this club thinking, where's my door? I got to hide from you. That isn't the way it works. We don't require a donation. I'd say we don't even expect a donation. We hope that you'll make a donation. Thank you very much.
I will say, sure, he'll take your money. Folks, that's our meeting for this week. I hope everybody has a great week. Lots of Tar Heel sports this week. Go Heels!